Now, I'm a simple man. I play simple stuffs. I base pretty much all my improvising off the pentatonic scale. The blues scale. That's why I love interesting chord progressions. Like the famous Sunny progression, because it modulates through a couple of keys, but the same pentatonic scale fits them both. So, simples. So these changes make my old blues licks sound new again. Because over A minor sounds completely different to over G minor to C9. But one of my sons came over this week and we were jamming on this progression, and he showed me how his ridiculously awesome teacher had introduced him to using the Super-Locrian mode. To play over the E chord, the dominant seventh in the progression. Now, I love me some theory, and I can play lots of scales. But I never feel like I can think fast enough to flip between them on the spur of the moment, on the fly, and really nail those changes. Now, I know that's simply because I haven't spent the requisite hours of hardcore dedication to that particular aspect of playing. If I'd played the Super-Locrian as much as I've played the pentatonic minor, I'd be Super-Locrian man! Saving locomotives and leaping burning children in a single bound. But... So the chord progression from Sunny, written by Bobby Hebb back in the 60s, has been covered and appropriated countless times. Most recently I noticed it pop up in Tom Misch's It Runs Through Me. Actually, I should chuck that in the title. Tom Misch will get heaps more views than Super-Locrian rubbish. Anyway, so the progression is this. If we're in A minor, it's A minor, C9, F major 7, B minor 7 flat 5 to E7. There's also a B section that starts at the same, A minor, C9, F major 7, but then it goes to a cool, like a B flat 7 chord before a B minor 11 and an E7 to get back to the A minor. Of course, there's any number of ways to add substitutions to that. So the most common one would be, instead of going straight to the C9, the G minor 7 to the C7. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. So, but check this out. I can improvise over that entire progression just using the A minor pentatonic. I just want to qualify this section by saying I'm not advocating to limit yourself to 5 notes for everything. In fact, it was quite hard for me to not throw in like F notes and other things to suit those chords. You know, trust your ear. But I just want to illustrate that we can improvise over this entire progression using only 5 notes in the A minor pentatonic scale. If If you're interested in why this works, stay tuned till the end and I'll explain that. So that's heaps of fun and is a very valid improvisational exercise because it allows your ears to adjust to hearing those same notes that you've heard all those times over some different keys, different chords, and gives you some different ideas, freshens things up. And I found it an interesting exercise, limiting myself to not putting in those extra notes that I might normally slide into, because it really made me think more about phrasing and ideas rather than simply note choices. So how do we incorporate this Super-Locrian mode without hurting ourselves? Well, I had a cool thought. What if I compare the Super-Locrian to the minor pentatonic and then just slightly adjust my blues licks? So the first thing I noticed is that out of the 5 notes, there's only one that's not in the Super-Locrian mode. So it's the first note of the scale. A is not in there, but if we make it A flat, so that's pretty easy. You know, we've still got 2 notes per string, standard. That sounds pretty damn cool. So that would make it really simple to change up some of our standard licks, like if we just did it becomes, or so that's a pretty bloody easy adjustment for the old noggin. So what I've done here is just played through, limiting myself to the pentatonic scale. Then I've gone back and gone, oh, well, that sounds pretty cool. That's a pretty cool run. What if I just changed a couple of notes to make it Super-Locrian? What would it sound like? So here's the results. This run becomes this run. And this one becomes this. This one becomes this. And this one becomes that. That little exercise of just an hour or so really got my head into the sound of the Super-Locrian mode, as well as where the notes fall in relationship to what I know well. So that made it very easy, especially that. And I already know we can hear that this F note is going to fit nicely throughout that progression. I mean, it's basically an F chord progression, so that's going to fit well. So that's another note out of the Super-Locrian. So it's easy for me to now. The other cool thing I noticed is that if we go back 2 frets to a G minor pentatonic, all of those notes are in the F melodic minor or the E Super-Locrian mode. So yeah, that's another way. Although I must admit, I found that a little harder to use. I mean, it sounds great over the G minor and C7 chords, of course, but I found it a little trickier to use that over the E7 chord, but not impossible. Okay, theory nerds who've hung around to hear why this works. The reason we can use the A minor pentatonic scale over the entire progression is because the first modulation or key change is to the key of F major via the C7 chord, which is the dominant 7th in the key of F. And guess what? A minor is also in the key of F major. So in other words, we can build an A minor chord and we can build an A minor pentatonic scale from the notes contained in the key of F major. So those chords are in F major, and that scale is basically an F major scale with a couple of notes missing, just like it's a C major scale with a couple of other notes missing, just like it's a G major scale with a couple of different notes missing. So then when the song modulates back to A minor via the B minor 7 flat 5 and the E7, E augmented, E altered, whatever, the same scale works because we're going back to A minor. Those chords are taking us back to A minor. So then in the B section, it's all the same except we have that bizarre B flat 7th chord. Now, if you think of us as being in the key of F, B flat is the 4 chord in F, so it's a really natural sounding chord to go to in the key of F. So our ear's already there. Our ear is already hearing that scale. That scale includes the notes from the key of F. So that's why it works. The only thing is, there's a tiny tricky bit because the flat 7 in B flat 7 is the G sharp note and the root note is the B flat. So what have we got here? A note either side of what we would normally play. So, you know, if you avoid the A note when you get to that chord, like the D is already in that chord, the C is the 9th in B flat, the G is the 13th in B flat, the E is the sharp 11, but it works in this context because it's a note in in F, and we're in F at this point of the song, so that all works. It's just that A note you've got to be careful of. But you know what? You can play any note if you play it like you mean it anyway. So, you know, put it on the looper and sit on that A note if you want. It'll still sound great. Another note for the theory nerds, the Super-Locrian is the 7th mode of the F melodic minor scale. So it's just like playing an F melodic minor over the E chord, which sounds non-intuitive, but if we look at it in terms of starting the scale here, so the root note of the scale is an E, we're on an E chord, then we go to our F note, so we've got a flat 9 or a minor second, so that works well in an E altered chord, especially in this context, to go back to the A minor. Then we've got a G note, which was already in our pentatonic scale, so we're already using that one in there, and it's a sharp 9 in terms of an E7 chord. Then we've got an A flat, technically speaking, because we're at F minor. So that's the 3rd in E as a G sharp. Then we've got a flat 5. So this is the weird note, and it's probably the one you don't want to land on and hang on, and depending on how gutsy and brave you are. But yeah, that's the next note in the scale. So it's a flat 5 in an E altered situation. Still works. Then we've got a C note, so that's an E augmented 5th, a sharpened 5th. We've got a D note, which is our flat 7 in E, and then we're back to the E. So this part of it is straight out of the pentatonic scale. It's only beyond that we've got to change things. So instead of A, G, we've got A sharp, G sharp, or B flat, A flat. Yeah, great. All right. Have fun with it. Have fun. That's what it's all about. It's what music's all about. Getting smiles on people's faces. Or tears, you know. Not on yours due to improvisational failure, though. Alright guys, don't forget to like, and don't forget to tell your musical friends if you think anyone else might benefit from some of this yak. I'll see you in another week.